Today we are heading over to the giddying heights of the Nepalese Himalayas. We will be doing a takeoff and a landing at the world's most dangerous airport. And it's earned this name with good reason. It sits at an elevation of over 9,000 feet. Lukla Airport is the quickest way for adventurous trekkers to find their way into the Himalayan mountains. It's located roughly 40 miles from Mount Everest Base Camp, and it's commonly thought of as the starting point for many summit attempts. It's nestled into the side of a mountain, and there is only one way in and one way out of this airfield. Go-around decisions have to be made very early as you close into the airport. Any attempt to go around would result in a crash. There have been many accidents over the years, and only a handful of pilots can make this approach. And you're going to learn how to do that in this video for Microsoft Flight Simulator. So here we are up in the Himalayan mountains in the world's most dangerous airport, Lukla. The first challenge you have is maneuvering your aircraft on the ground. This airfield is extraordinarily small. The runway actually goes down quite a steep incline. As you turn your aircraft to line up to take off, you actually can't see the runway because the edge of that point where it tips over is just so steep. Virtual reality really does a fantastic job of bringing this to life. Getting ourselves lined up here on the center line. It's a short field takeoff, so we've got one notch of flaps in. We're actually going to keep our toe brakes down. We're going to build up the manifold pressure in the Baron, waiting until we can hear high RPM on the propellers. Then we're going to let off our toe brakes, tipping over the crest of that hill, now running down that incline. Building speed, you really do need to keep your attention outside the aircraft, staying on that center line. 85 knots, rotate. You will get initially a negative rate of descent because of that incline that you've come down on the runway. As soon as you see a positive rate, get the gear up. And then we want to do a very, very gentle climb, no more than a couple of 100 feet per minute, keeping our horizontal speed up, keeping that notch of flaps in, and we want to build our altitude here up to about 10,000 feet. Now, despite it being very cold up at 9,000 feet, the sun heats the surfaces of the mountain, and that causes warm air to rise, and that means you're going to experience an awful lot of turbulence as you're coming out of Lukla. Making sure you've got some visual reference points outside of the aircraft and not fixating too much on the instruments, you're going to see your vertical speed is going to jump around all over the place. So making sure you've got the right kind of attitude, and I don't mean your attitude, I mean attitude as in the pitch of the aircraft, using visual reference points to make sure that you've got that nice steady climb out. Now clearly most aircraft that take off from this airport would use the valley to ascend to higher altitudes and then fly on out. We're actually going to do a 180. There's enough of a space in the valley in front of us that we can actually do a 180 and then get ourselves set up for an approach back into Lukla. We don't want to climb any higher than 10,000 feet, otherwise we're going to have to come down some. That's going to build our horizontal speed, and actually having a nice slow controlled approach into Lukla, making sure that we touch down at just a smidge under 85 knots is going to be really important. The Baron is a fast aircraft. Making sure that we've got her slowed down for a nice controlled descent is key to a good landing. Now, you wouldn't realistically attempt this in the Baron, and that is because the Baron is naturally aspirated. as you climb, as you gain altitude, as the air pressure gets thinner, the amount of manifold pressure will drop in the engine, and that equates to less thrust available for you. That does create quite dangerous flight conditions, which is why you wouldn't try this in real life. You would want to use a turbocharged aircraft realistically for this, but this is Microsoft Flight Simulator. We're here for a real challenging and fun flight, and I just love the Baron. I love to fly it everywhere. It's quite a steep turn we're in here. Important to keep our altitude control. We don't want to gain a load of horizontal speed because we're having to descend. We've kept that notch of flaps in all the way round. Once we're out of this turn and our wings are level, we're going to bring the gear down, which is going to slow us down yet further. So we've got to gear down. Now, keeping your view outside of the aircraft is very, very, very important for this approach. This is visual flight rules, and there was never an airport where this is more relevant. I use visual cues on the landscape in front of me. There are two black ridges in front of me. I use those as a reference point, and the lower of these, I know that I want to be about 9,300, 9,400 feet in altitude when I'm crossing that, and shortly after I cross that ridge, I know I'm going to start my turn to the right into Lukla. I'm going to want a descent rate of a couple of 100 feet per minute in this aircraft. This aircraft is fast. So make sure you keep your view outside of the aircraft. Again, virtual reality is great for this. Not fixating on the instruments, using those visual cues to get yourself lined up correctly. So if you didn't have a nice controlled descent at this stage, it would certainly be a go-around. You want to make that decision very early. If you're close to touching down on the airfield, there is no way to go around. You're going to find yourself and your aircraft decorating the side of the mountain. So realistically speaking, here is your go, no-go decision on whether you're going to make the landing. And again, using visual references in front of me, there are two ridges that I know the airstrip is just going to be to the left of. Now, the airstrip, it's not easy to see. It's not easy to see in VR. It's not easy to see if you fly this on a flat screen monitor. Frankly, it's not easy to see if you fly this thing for real. That's why these visual markers are the absolute key. We're going to want to get our final notch of flaps in once the wings are level. We're going to want to do this relatively close to the airfield. That's going to take an awful lot of airspeed out for us. And we're going to want to touch down at just short of 85 knots. Lots of turbulence bouncing the aircraft around here. We're arguably a little low and a little slow, taking the power out and then touching down for a nice smooth landing. The tendency here to hit the brakes really hard. Not in this aircraft. That gradient on that slope is going to slow us down adequately. A very small touch of the brakes. Many aircraft brake too hard, and then they actually don't have enough thrust, again because of the altitude, to get themselves up the incline. This one is going to take some practice. I'd be very surprised if you got a controlled and graceful landing on your first attempt. Indeed, this isn't my first attempt, I'll admit, but there we go. So I'm not going to lie, that was not the first attempt at this landing. There were a number that I did manage to get down, but they weren't the most graceful. There were a number that went horribly wrong. This really is a very challenging approach. The Beechcraft Baron is not the best choice because it's naturally aspirated. It means at that kind of altitude, the air pressure is so low, it's difficult without the turbochargers to get the kind of thrust that you need to keep the aircraft moving at well above stall speed. A bit of fun, by all means. Let me know how you got on with your approach down in the comments below. As always, I hope you're very well wherever in the world you are. Stay safe in the skies, and I will see you in my next one.